attention? May I have everybody's attention? There are more than 6 deputy speakers who are present in today's session. But I thank the majority for designating me as the presiding officer for today's historical event. And therefore, in the pursuit of our highest constitutional mandate and in the truest service to the Filipino nation, this session is hereby resumed. The majority floor leader.
Mr. Speaker, good morning. Dear colleagues, good morning. Our parliamentary status, Mr. Speaker, is that we have resumed session. Session, having called the roll previously, has established the quorum and being suspended and now resumed. We are in order to conduct our business as we have a quorum since session was merely suspended. We can conduct our business. Mr. Speaker, similar to previous sessions conducted outside of the session hall, such as what plenary has done in Batangas, we are holding session today to fulfill our obligations to the Filipino people. With that established, Mr. Speaker, that we are in session and that we have a quorum and that we can conduct our business. Further, to show our legality and constitutionality, I move to recognize our esteemed colleague, the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, the Honorable Rufus Rodriguez, who has joined us via Zoom as allowed by the rules of the House of Representatives. I move to recognize the Honorable Rufus Rodriguez.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, with your indulgence, we will recognize the Majority Floor Leader, Honorable Rufus, later. But I wish to remind everybody that what is more important is we seek the Lord's guidance. So may I, before everything, may I ask each and every member to please rise, and the distinguished Majority Floor Leader, please lead the prayer.
Let us bow our heads, put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Lord, please guide us today to make decisions to benefit our countrymen and our nation. Help us to think of our district mates who in their hope and zeal that your love and the hope that you bring be brought to light by the actions we take in this Congress. May their needs guide our every decision. May their hopes resonate in our hearts so that we can choose wisely, not only for us, but for generations to come. Bless our actions today. We approach you in all humility. While others have asked for power to do much, you have shown us weakness to show us our need for you. While others boast of strength, we implore you to lend us your might so that we can do much for the Filipino nation. For this we pray in Jesus' name, O Lord.
Amen. The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Please,
I reiterate my former motion to recognize our esteemed colleague from Cagayan de Oro, the Honorable Rufus Rodriguez, to elucidate further on the conduct of our session today.
the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro is hereby recognized. The gentleman from Cagayan de Oro is hereby recognized. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, can you hear me, Mr. Speaker?
Proceed. We can hear you clearly. Please proceed, gentleman from
Thank,
Cagayan de
thank
Oro.
you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our majority leader, this is Congressman Rufus Rodriguez, 2nd District of Cagayan de Oro City. I would like to discuss briefly the legal points in today's session. First question. Can a majority of the House of Representative members constituting a quorum resume session to do business? The answer is yes, pursuant to Section 16, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the Constitution, which provides that a majority of each House shall constitute a quorum to do business. And second, support for this session this morning is Section 75, Rule 11 of the House of Representatives, which provides that a majority of all the members of the House shall constitute a quorum, and the House shall not transact business without a quorum. That's the first question and the first answer. The second legal point, Mr. Speaker, Majority Leader, my dear colleagues, is it constitutional to hold sessions by a House of Congress not in the session hall? The answer again is yes. A majority of members of the House of Congress in attendance can hold sessions outside the regularly designated session halls. Pursuant to Section 16, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the Constitution, and Section 75, Rule 11 of the House of Representatives, a majority of each House shall constitute a quorum to do business, and it can do legislative business not necessarily inside the regularly designated session hall only. It will be recalled that the House of Representatives held a plenary session on January 22, 2020 at the Batangas Convention Center. Further, congressional committees regularly conduct committee hearings in pursuit of legislative action outside the halls of Congress. There is absolutely nothing in the Constitution or in the House of Representatives that a House of Congress can only hold sessions to do legislative business inside the regularly designated session halls. In fact, Section 89 of Rule 12 of the House of Representatives expressly allows the conduct of sessions through electronic platforms when there is urgent necessity to act on any measure like this immediate and most expeditious passage of the General Appropriations Act. Third issue, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, can a House of Congress constitutionally hold sessions without the mace, as as long as the majority of the members are present. Yes, pursuant to Section 16, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the Constitution, and Section 75, Rule 11 of the House of Representatives, a majority of each house shall constitute a quorum to do business. Pursuant to Section 165, Rule 27 of the House of Representatives, the mace shall be the symbol of authority of the House and shall be displayed at the Speaker's rostrum when the House is in session. This rule is not absolute. The true manifestation of the authority of each House is in the plenary when there is a majority present and in attendance conformably with Section 16.2 of Article 6. Thus, we now have a plenary session, Mr. Speaker. Thus, whenever there is a majority of each House, such majority constitutes a quorum with full constitutional authority to do legislative business with or without the mace at the rostrum of the presiding officer. There is absolutely nothing in the Constitution or in the House of Representatives or in any Supreme Court ruling which declares or rules directly, indirectly, or by inference that any session of the House of Congress and all matters taken thereat are invalid or null and void in the absence of the mace at the rostrum during such session. After all, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, the mace is merely a symbol of authority, and the mace cannot take precedence or acquire a higher legal authority over the physical warm bodies and those attending through electronic platforms, constituting a majority of the members of each House present and in attendance representing the very authority of each House. Next question, and the last one. Was the suspension of the HOR session on October 6, 2020 until November 15, 2020 constitutional? The answer is no. Such suspension is unconstitutional, as well as in direct violation of the legislative calendar for the second regular session of the 18th Congress. Section 16, Paragraph 3 of Article 6 of the Constitution provides that each House may determine the rules of its proceedings. Pursuant to each House rules of its proceedings, the Senate adopted on September 2, 2020, the Senate Concurrent Resolution number 13. And the House, we adopted on September 2, 2020, House Concurrent Resolution number 11, both providing for the legislative calendar for the second regular session of the 18th Congress of the Philippines as follows. Calendar of session, second regular session. Number 1, commencement of session July 27, 2020 up to October 16, 2020. Number 2, suspension of session October 17, 2020 to November 15, 2020. Resumption of session November 16, 2020, December 18, 2020. Therefore, in the calendar clearly, suspension of session will start October 17, 2020 to November 15, 2020. This is agreed by both houses of Congress in accordance with the Constitution. From this legislative calendar of both houses, suspension of session of each house shall take effect only on October 17, 2020, but at the session of the House of Representatives on October 6, 2020. The House of Representatives, presided by Deputy Speaker Reneo Abu, and upon motion of the Representative Xavier Romualdo, declared suspension of its session until November 16 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 11 days in advance of the October 17, 2020 regular suspension of session expressly provided by the legislative calendar approved by both Congresses. Mr. Speaker, my distinguished colleagues, such suspension of session 11 days in advance of October 17, 2020 regular suspension of session as expressly provided by the calendar is obviously a flagrant violation of the legislative calendar and consequently also embracing violation of each House rules of its proceedings and a violation of the House of Congress of its own rules of proceedings as such as the one presently in question is a direct violation of Section 16.3, Article 6 of the Constitution, providing that each House may determine the rules of its proceedings. Therefore, the House of Representatives' present suspension of session 11 days in advance of the October 17, 2020 regular suspension of session expressly provided by both chambers is clearly unconstitutional. From another legal point of view, such suspension of session 11 days in advance of the October 17, 2020 regular session of Congress expressly provided for by the calendar is to all intents and purposes equivalent to at least akin to the adjournment of session by the House of Representatives for more than 33 days without the consent of the Senate and is in direct violation of Section 16, Paragraph 5, Article 6 of the Constitution. With all of this, Mr. Chairman, it is my humble opinion that this session is constitutional, valid, necessary, and will correct the unconstitutional suspension of the session. We should therefore now continue our business, and it has now changed the leadership, and we shall all now be able to install the proper Speaker of our House, Speaker Lord Allan Velasco. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We thank the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro City for sharing his wisdom. The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it has been proven without a doubt we are in session and we have quorum. We are in order to conduct our business. And with that, Mr. Speaker, regarding Rule 3, Section 14 of our rules, we must now elect for ourselves our Secretary General, whose duties are found in the rules of our House of Representatives, keeping in mind, of course, Section 167 of Rule 28 of the House of Representatives. And may I read? Amendment to the rules. Any provision of these rules, except for those that are also embodied in the Constitution, may be amended by a majority vote of all the members of the House. Mr. Speaker, our parliamentary status as we have no SecGen present, we will now elect for ourselves a Secretary General. That is our parliamentary status, Mr. Speaker. May I now solicit a nomination due to the absence of a Secretary General who shall perform these functions for our session. May I now solicit a motion to nominate for election a Secretary General for our session. I move to recognize the Honorable Christine Mihan.
The Honorable lady from Ilocos Sur is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to nominate Attorney Joselia Bighani Sipin, Mr. Speaker, as SecGen.
Are there any other nominations? The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other nominees, may I solicit a motion to close the nominations for the position of Secretary General?
I move to close the nomination.
Mr. Speaker, we have a motion to close the nominations for the position of Secretary General.
Is there any objection to the, or perhaps the House should put it to vote the nomination of Attorney Joselia Bighani Sipin as Secretary General of the House? Those who are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Attorney Sipin, for being the new Secretary General of the House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend session for a few minutes so that our new Secretary General can take her oath before the presiding officer.
Session is suspended. In view of this undertaking, may I ask all the members to please rise. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please mention your name,
I, Joselia Bighani Sipin,
having been elected Secretary General
having
of the House
been,
of Representatives,
having been elected Secretary General of the House of Representatives,
hereby solemnly swear
hereby solemnly swear
that I will well and faithfully discharge,
that I will well and faithfully discharge,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
the duties of my present position,
the duties of my present position,
and of all others
and of all others
I may hereafter hold
I may hereafter hold
under the Republic of the Philippines,
under the Republic of the Philippines,
that I will support and defend
That
the
I-
Constitution of the Philippines,
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the Philippines,
that I will bear
That-
true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will obey the laws, legal orders, and decrees
that I will obey the laws, legal orders, and decrees
promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of the Philippines,
promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of the Philippines,
and that I impose this obligation upon myself voluntarily
and that I impose this obligation upon myself voluntarily,
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Secretary General. Session is resumed. The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, plenary having elected our new Secretary General, we will now proceed in accordance with Section 14, Rule 3 of the Rules of the House of Representatives to elect our Sergeant-at-Arms, there being no Sergeant-at-Arms present at today's session. May I solicit a motion to nominate Sergeant-at-Arms? I move to recognize the Honorable Mike Aglipay of the party list DIWA.
The distinguished gentleman from party list Diwa, my good friend, is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to nominate Major General Mau Aplaska, retired, as Sergeant-at-Arms. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any other nominations? The Majority Floor Leader.
There being no other nominees for the position of Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Speaker, I move to elect
I think they want to close.
Okay, Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, I move to close the nomination for the position of Sergeant at Arms.
There being no, is there any objection? There being none, nomination for the position of Sergeant at Arms of the House of Representatives is hereby closed. The Majority Floor Leader.
with that, Mr. Speaker, having closed the period of nomination for the position of Sergeant at Arms, I move that we elect, now have voting on the election of Brigadier General Mau Aplaska as our new Sergeant at Arms.
Those who are in favor of General Mau Ranada Aplaska to be the Sergeant at Arms of the House of Representatives, those who are in favor say aye. Aye. Those who are against say nay. Congratulations, the Sergeant at Arms. The new Sergeant at Arms, may we call on the newly elected Sergeant at Arms in the person of General Aplaska.
Mr. Speaker,
The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, before the new Sergeant at Arms, our elected Sergeant at Arms takes his oath, could we recognize, in accordance with Section 165, Rule 27 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, our mace, and I move that the mace displayed before the Speaker shall be the symbol of authority of the House and shall be displayed at the Speaker's rostrum when the House is in session. It shall serve as the warrant of the Sergeant at Arms in enforcing order in the House. I so move to declare this our official House mace.
Is there any objection to the motion? The chair hears none. Motion is hereby approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend session so that our Sergeant at Arms can take his oath of office before our Speaker.
Session suspended. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Having been elected Sergeant at Arms of the House of Representatives, hereby solemnly swear that I will well and faithfully discharge, to the best of my ability, the duties of my present position, and of all others I may hereafter hold under the Republic of the Philippines, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the Philippines, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the laws, legal orders, and decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of the Philippines, and that I impose this obligation upon myself voluntarily, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. Sergeant at Arms.
Ako rin.
Session resumed. The Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, we move to recognize our esteemed colleague, the Honorable Lito Atienza.
The distinguished gentleman from the party list, Buhay, and from the city of Manila is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this point and juncture of our very historic meeting, and accepting the fact that we have developed many internal problems in Congress, necessitating our restoring public trust and confidence, we are moving that we declare the position of Speaker vacant and ready for occupation.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any? Session is suspended. Session resumed. Yes, the majority floor leader.
Mr. Speaker, our parliamentary status is that the Honorable Lito Atienza has a pending motion on the floor. He has moved to declare the position of Speaker vacant. According to Section 13, Rule 3 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, the position of Speaker may only be declared vacant through nominal voting by a majority vote of all members. Mr. Speaker, the motion of the Honorable Atienza is in order. We are in session. We have a quorum, and therefore, let us put his vote, his motion to a nominal vote, and may the Speaker thus be direct the Secretary General for nominal voting, to call the roll for nominal voting on the motion of the Honorable Atienza to declare the position of Speaker vacant. And may I remind our colleagues, a yes vote supports the motion of the Honorable Atienza declaring the position of Speaker of House of Representatives vacant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the motion? The chair would like to make it clear that the motion presented by the gentleman from Buhay Party List and the City of Manila is to motion to declare the position of the Speaker vacant. Is there any objection to the motion? The chair hears none. Motion is hereby approved. The Secretary General is hereby designated to proceed with the nominal voting and call the roll. Please proceed.
Roll call of members. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg Zaldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Alfonso, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Senaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Juan Miguel, Arroyo Maria Lourdes, Atienza, Aumentado, Bañas Nograles, Babasa, Bagaching, Balindong, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondoc, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulut, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Kawagdan, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Cayetano, Alan Peter, Cayetano, Mariela Arni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco Carlos, Colliantes, Pisólogo, Cuwa, Cuaresma, Cueva, Culyamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, Del Mar, De Los Santos, De Loso Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Muhammad Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, D. Faustino Michael Carlos, D. Faustino Ino, D. Ian Paul, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer, Juliet Marie, Ferrer, Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Ed Christopher, Go Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales, Aurelio Dong, Gonzales, Neptali, Gonzales, Sandro, Goriseta, Guico, Gullas, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D. Hofer, Haloshos, Javier Jimenez, Ko Elisa, Ko Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lasatin, Liachon, Legarda, Lim Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Mariño, Marquez, Martinez, Madba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Natividad Nagaño, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Juan Fidel, Nolasco, Núñez Malañaon, Waminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ortega, Juan Odison, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Ferdinand, Romualdez Yeda, Romualdo Romulo Roque Sakdalan sa Gabaria, Sakaluran Salceda sa Limbangon, Salo Sanchez Sangcopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulog Saveriano, Xiao Silverio, Singson, Singsonihan, Sinsuat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Sharian, Tan Sherney, Tejada, Teves Arnulfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Tor, T. Allan, T. Diego, Umali, Alfonso, Umali, Maria Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica Villalago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Manuel, Zamora Ronaldo, Zarate, Zubiri. Second round of nominal voting. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg Saldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Alfonso, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Senaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Juan Miguel, Arroyo, Maria Lourdes, Atienza, Aumentado, Bañas Nograles, Babasa, Bagaching, Balindong, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandingan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolivia, Bondoc, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulut, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabutyan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cawagdan, Cari, Castelo, Castro, Franz, Castro, Fredinil, Cayetano, Allan Peter, Cayetano, Mariela Arni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco, Colyantes, Crisologo, Cuwa, Quaresma, Cueva, Colyamat, Dagook, Dalipid, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, Del Mar, De Los Santos, Delioso Montalia, Dimaporo, Abdullah, Dimaporo, Muhammad Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, D. Faustino Michael Carlos, D. Faustino Ino, D. Ian Paul, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas, Ria Cristina, Fariñas, Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer, Juliet Marie, Ferrer, Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia, Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go, Ed Christopher, Go, Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales, Aurelio, Gonzales, Neptali, Gonzales, Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulyas, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Halosos, Javier, Jimenez, Ko Elisa, Ko Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Liachon, Ligarda, Lim Kaychong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Natividad Nagaño, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho Jonas, Nograles, Juan Fidel, Nolasco, Núñez Malañaon, Uaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ortega, Uano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos Paduano Palma, Pancho Panotes Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Remulia, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez, Ferdinand, Romualdez Sieda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Sanchez, Sangkopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulog, Saveliano, Xiao Silverio, Singson, Singson Mihan, Sinsuat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez, Aleta, Suarez, David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samier, Tan Sharian, Tan Shirney, Tejada, Teves, Arnulfo, Teves, Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Tutor, T. Allan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Maria Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano Valmayor Vargas, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villafuerte Luis, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Manuel, Zamora Ronaldo, Zarate Carlos, Zubiri.
While the tally is still being processed, I wish to recognize the Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as explained by the Secretary General to me previously, the voting is being tallied in accordance with Section 91 of Rule 12, Conduct of Plenary Sessions through Electronic Platforms. And may I read Section 91? Notwithstanding the provisions of Sections 58, 119, and 120 hereof, members shall register their votes through virtual conference or through their respective mobile phone numbers or other electronic accounts previously submitted to and verified by the Secretary General. Mr. Speaker, all of us in attendance here have participated in the almost daily nominal voting conducted through electronic platforms, through Zoom, through Viber by texting our accounts. We have used our numbers and our electronic accounts previously, and our votes have been recorded. Therefore, our votes today, as registered through Section 91, Rule 12, are in order, and we await the Secretary General's count of our valid votes on the motion to declare the position of Speaker vacant.
Clarificatory.
Before the chair announces the figures, I believe, with the permission of the majority floor leader, the distinguished gentleman from Buhay Party List and City of Manila have something to say.
Mr. Speaker, we are in the process of voting, which may not be interrupted. I beg the indulgence of the esteemed Atienza that after the results of the voting are announced, we will definitely and gladly yield the floor to him.
The chair submits to the suggestion of the majority floor leader. And therefore, the chair announces that with 186 voting in the affirmative, the chair therefore declares the position of the Speaker of the House of Representatives vacant. The majority floor leader.
At this juncture, Mr. Speaker, the position of Speaker having been declared vacant by majority of the members of the House of Representatives, the number of votes, 186, being far above the 151 required for a majority of all members of the House, it is now our duty to elect a new Speaker of the House of Representatives. I solicit now a motion to nominate candidates for the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives. I move to recognize our esteemed colleague, the Honorable Mikey Romero, from Party List 1, Pacman.
The distinguished gentleman from 1 Pacman Party List is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on this historic day, it is my honor and privilege to nominate a distinguished and most qualified man to the position of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. A gentleman of the highest order. For God and our country, 1521, I respectfully nominate Representative Lord Allan Velasco for the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen from 1 Pacman Party List.
Mr. Speaker.
The majority floor leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Lito Atienza of Party List Buhay.
The distinguished gentleman from Buhay Party List and the City of Manila is hereby recognized.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, we would like to second the motion. It is our personal feeling that the House indeed needs a change of leadership. But with a clarification that the nominee, Congressman Velasco, has already been elected on July of 2019. If you will remember, gentlemen and ladies, when we agreed to the term sharing agreement, brokered by no less than the President himself, we voted for 2 speakers at the time. The first one to occupy the 15 months period, as volunteered by him, is the present or the past Speaker, Congressman Cayetano. But at the same time that we voted for him, agreed with him, we voted for the alternate second in command in the person of Congressman Velasco. Kaya kung tayo po iboboto natin sa huli ngayon, pangalawa na po yan. And I'd like to mention also that a nomination and endorsement for Congressman Velasco has been sent around, and the undersigned is a witness to it. We voted for Velasco for the second time. So when we vote today for the nominee, Congressman Lord Velasco, we're voting for him actually for the third time. It's about time that he takes over the hand and the leadership of our government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable gentleman from Buhay Party List and Sikip Manila, the Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, contained in the nomination and manifestation of the esteemed gentleman from the party list Buhay is mentioned that indeed he has signed in accordance with Section 91 of Rule 12 and has registered his vote in accordance with the rules through electronic platforms, which he says is his second time to be voting, and today will be the third. Similar to all of us who have signed our vote and have registered our vote in accordance with Section 91, nominal voting of the conduct of plenary sessions through electronic platforms. Mr. Speaker, now for his nomination, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Rizal, the Honorable Jack Duavit.
The honorable gentleman from the 1st District of Rizal is hereby recognized. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, for peace and productivity for our country, I nominate Congressman Lord Allan Velasco.
Thank you. Gentleman from Rizal, the Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, for his nomination, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Oriental Mindoro, the Honorable Doy Liachon.
The gentleman from the 1st District of Oriental Mindoro is hereby recognized.
Mr. Presiding Officer, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues of this august chamber, a good day to all of you. I take the pride and privilege to nominate an honorable member of this body as the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. One must realize that, I must say also, it's a hell of a ride for over a year. I thought this day would not come. There were lowly moments, and even, of course, high moments. Happy moments because along this journey, we are actually meeting some friends. As we realize today, this is actually historic. Historic that in the sense that the House of Representatives would speak. Today, as we gather, I would like to recognize and appreciate the great men and women of this august chamber for coming in. All of you are brave and fought, and even sometimes doubtful what lies ahead. Even thinking that everything is to lose. But I know believing in the virtues of integrity and honor, everything is to gain for all of the members of this House of Representatives. As I said, the simple problem I thought was just actually very simple. A non-compliance of an agreement. But a simple violation of an agreement actually became blown out of proportion. As a lawyer, I was thinking of myself, kaya pala maraming nagkakagulo sa bansa dahil ang tao ay walang salita. Nadadamay pa ang ating pambansang budget, pati na ang maraming Pilipinong naghihirap na dahil sa pandemya ang ating nararanasan. We are the representatives of the people. The growing resentments of our members, rooting definitely coming from the unfair distribution of budget allocation among representatives. And later on, when we came out and told before the public